Instability in Russia. Is Putin's grip on power loosening? Hi there, everyone. I'm Jeff, and this is Plain English. Here at Plain English, we use current events and trending topics to help you upgrade your English. There are two halves to each audio lesson. We start with a story about something in the news, some trending topic, and in the second half, we show you how to use an English expression. Today is lesson 590. The story is about what happened in Russia with the Wagner Group. A private army started and then stopped an internal mutiny against the Russian military. Tanks were rolling down the highway toward Moscow when the whole thing was called off. That's our main story, and the expression I'll teach you today is overplay your hand. Overplay your hand. That's a good one. That's coming up in the second half of the audio. Now, if you want to do more than just listen, we have you covered there too. There's a lot more about this topic, a lot more about English you can learn today, July 17th, or whatever day you're listening. You can find that at plainenglish.com/590. And that, by the way, includes a free transcript of the audio. JR is the producer. He's the one that makes sure all those great resources are available to you at plainenglish.com/590. I think we're ready to jump into today's story. Here we go. One hallmark of Vladimir Putin's leadership style, if you can call it that, is to create rivalries among the people below him. If everyone feels threatened all of the time, then nobody can amass enough power or gain enough confidence to depose the leader. The Wagner Group was a private army. To most people in stable, peaceful countries, this sounds weird. Only the government has war-making abilities. But years ago, Putin decided he wanted an army outside the regular chain of command. So he turned to the Wagner Group, a privately owned paramilitary organization. The details were kept hidden, but the group was supposedly co-founded by Yevgeny Prigozhin. Prigozhin spent years in a Soviet prison. When he got out, he started a catering business, which later became the company that served the Russian president meals at state dinners. Having a private army did two things for Putin. First, he could send this army to fight in places like Africa, and Putin could deny that he was the one who sent them there. The army could do his dirty work around the world, and Putin could escape official blame. The other thing it did is it served as a constant low-level rival to Russia's official defense ministry. Nobody in the defense ministry could feel truly safe in their jobs, knowing their boss also commanded a separate, off-the-books army. For years, the Wagner Group was a secret. Prigozhin denied he was involved in any army. the Russian government denied the Wagner Group existed. Private armies are notionally illegal in Russia. But then Russia launched its war against Ukraine. To prosecute the war, Putin needed more than just the soldiers in the regular army. So he sent the Wagner Group to fight in Ukraine too. The Russian government paid Wagner Group for its wartime services. That's when Prigozhin came out of the shadows and openly acknowledged that he was the leader of this private army. And the Wagner Group had success in Ukraine. Defense analysts say that the whole Russian army failed to make any territorial gains in the last year of the war, but the Wagner Group was responsible for taking Bakhmut, a city in eastern Ukraine. In other words, in the last year, the only reason Russia made any gains in Ukraine is due to the Wagner Group, this private army. The Wagner Group recruited private soldiers by offering them high salaries. They also went to Russian prisons and, with Putin's blessing, offered prisoners clemency in exchange for military service. But all was not well behind the scenes. The Russian army came to resent the Wagner Group's forces, and the Wagner Group thought the Russian generals in charge of the war effort were doing a bad job. The Wagner Group did find some territorial success in Ukraine, but it suffered immense casualties. Prigozhin spoke openly and critically against officials high up in the chain of command. He said it was a mistake to invade Ukraine, and once there, he said that Russia had botched the war effort. Ordinary Russians can go to jail for even calling the war a war, but Prigozhin seemed to have free rein to criticize the highest officials in his signature style. In other words, in vicious, expletive-filled attacks. Russia's defense ministry decided that enough was enough. They ordered all Wagner Group soldiers to sign on with them and to join the official armed forces by July 1st, 2023. That action effectively would shut down the Wagner Group and leave Prigozhin without an army. What happened next shook the world. On Friday night, June 23rd, Prigozhin announced a march for justice. He took his forces fighting in Ukraine and turned them around. They marched into the city of Rostov, a city of about 1 million people. Rostov plays an important role in supplying the war effort, and it hosts important defense ministry offices. Wagner forces seized it from the Russian military, and for them, it was easy. The locals in Rostov cheered them. the official Russian forces put up little resistance. Putin wasn't happy. He went on television and called the move traitorous. He said it was a knife in the back of the Russian people. It looked like Prigozhin had overplayed his hand. He had gone too far. Now, he had not only lost Putin's support, but he made himself a target of the Russian state. Then, Prigozhin made a stunning move. He doubled down. He said he would move his troops to Moscow, but he didn't say what they'd do when they got there. Prigozhin, the leader of a private army, sent a column of trucks and fighting equipment on the highway from Rostov to Moscow, the capital. They covered over 1,000 kilometers of Russian territory with little resistance. They almost got to Moscow, and then they stopped, just 200 kilometers from the capital. During the day Saturday, Prigozhin and Putin reached a deal. The details are murky, but the story goes like this. Alexander Lukashenko, the president, some say dictator, of neighboring Belarus, brokered a peace deal. Prigozhin would stop his insurrection and turn his troops around. In exchange, Russia would not pursue charges against Prigozhin, but he would have to leave Russia. He would go live in Belarus. The crisis was over almost as fast as it started. The whole thing lasted less than 36 hours. For a tense day, there seemed to be a real possibility of a coup or even a civil war in Russia. Prigozhin appeared to have kept his word and left Russia. He was seen in Belarus. But just last week, questions surfaced again about whether he had stayed there or gone back to Russia. Russia has given former Wagner Group soldiers the option to sign with the Russian army, follow Prigozhin to Belarus, or simply go home. It appears that Putin has survived the gravest challenge yet to his 23-year rule. But the consensus is that he is deeply weakened. Somehow, he let a private army march 1,000 kilometers through his country almost to the capital. What was the real Russian military doing that whole time? How did a private army do that so easily? Is Russia's military really that weak? Or did Prigozhin have supporters high up in the Russian Defense Ministry? Flight trackers showed Putin's presidential plane leaving Moscow during the chaos on Saturday, though the government said Putin remained in the Kremlin. Putin's image as the strongman, as a leader, as the one in charge, that has been seriously weakened. That doesn't necessarily mean the end is near. Leaders can use a brutal combination of repression, violence, and deprivation to stay in power long after they have been weakened and lost the support of the public. Just look at Nicolas Maduro. But it does look like Putin's image in Russia will never be the same. If you were rooting for Prigozhin to take down Putin, be careful what you wish for. Prigozhin is no humanitarian. His preferred way of executing soldiers is to crush their heads with a sledgehammer. Meanwhile, Lukashenko clearly enjoyed his time in the spotlight. He's been seen as Putin's errand boy for so long. Now he got to play the hero statesman, supposedly saving Putin from a potential mutiny or worse. Lukashenko said he's looking forward to learning all kinds of positive lessons from having Prigozhin in his country. Or not. Last week, Lukashenko said that Prigozhin had already left Belarus, and there was open speculation about whether he had gone back to Russia or not. This story may yet have another chapter. Today's expression is to overplay your hand. Now, I don't gamble, I don't play poker, but I think in poker, sometimes you have a good hand, a good set of cards, and sometimes you don't. You make decisions in the game based on the cards you have in your hand. So if you have a good hand, you can act aggressively. If you have a weak hand, maybe you should act more conservatively. Again, I don't know because I don't play poker. But what I do know is this. To overplay your hand in life is to act aggressively when you are not really in a good position. You overestimate how good your position is. You act like you're in a great position when really you are not. And as a result of this overconfidence, you suffer a bad outcome. Evgeny Prigozhin overplayed his hand in Russia. Prigozhin was in a good position. He wasn't part of the regular Russian military, but if anything, that was a good thing. He was recognized for success on the battlefield. His troops, many of them, loved him. Large parts of Russian society supported or admired him. He had the confidence of the president, and that means a lot. He had the freedom to speak his mind. So when the Russian military moved to force all his Wagner Group troops to join the official armed forces, Prigozhin reacted. He and his army took control of a Russian city away from the Russian army, and then they marched toward Moscow. That was too much. Prigozhin overplayed his hand. Listen, Prigozhin had a good position in Russia, but nobody is above Putin. Nobody can be seen to threaten him. This Prigozhin acted too confidently, he acted too aggressively, and he suffered the consequences as a result. Life in Minsk probably doesn't have the same glamour as life in Moscow or St. Petersburg, and his family remains in Russia. So he's not in a good position anymore. Walmart is the biggest retailer in America. It is the biggest retailer in the Fortune 500 list of big companies. Its enormous discount stores serve up everything from groceries to clothing to sports and automotive equipment. Walmart became America's biggest retailer in 1990. In 1997, it decided to make its move into Germany. This would be the first step into its European expansion. Walmart seemed unstoppable in the United States. The company's ruthless cost cutting kept prices low, and consumers appreciated the everyday low prices they could find at the discount store. But when it moved into Germany, Walmart overplayed its hand. It acted too confidently. It acted too aggressively, and it paid the price for its overconfidence. Walmart was the retailing king in America, but it was not the retailing king of the world. In fact, the formula that worked so well in America did not transfer to the German market. Walmart's main competitive advantage was its low prices. But Germany had a number of laws and protections that prevented Walmart from offering very low prices. Walmart opened over 80 stores in Germany. The company eventually sold them all at a huge loss and exited the German market. This is a case of a business overplaying its hand. It acted too confidently, more confidently than the situation warranted, and in the end, Walmart paid the price. The last time I started a new job, not plain English, was in 2009. I started with one other person. We'll call him Matthew, not his real name. Matthew had applied for multiple jobs and was hired with me at my old company. Now, unfortunately for him, the job he got at my company was not his top choice. A few weeks later, he got an offer from another company, a job he liked better. So he said, "Great, I'll quit this one and go take that one." Smart move, right? Well, he didn't tell that other company what he was doing. He didn't tell them that he had just started a new job. And when the other company found out, they didn't think that his behavior with my company was the sign of a good an honest and loyal employee. They didn't want to hire someone who was willing to quit a job after a few weeks. So because of what he did to us, they didn't want him at their company. So they rescinded his offer. They took it back. Matthew went from having 2 opportunities to none. He overplayed his hand. He should have just kept the job he was offered. Instead, he acted too confidently and he paid the price. Today's quote of the week is from Bob Goff. He said, "Some of the most beautiful chapters in our lives won't have a title until much later." That means you won't know the significance of certain times in your life until much later. Think about that. Look back on important years in your life. You probably have a title to that chapter now, but did you know at the time how that chapter would figure in your life story? Maybe not. Some of the most beautiful chapters in our lives won't have a title until much later, says Bob Goff. Well, if you ever need to use an alias and you need help thinking of a fake name, use ChatGPT. I just did that now. Matthew, I said to ChatGPT, give me a random male name, and it did. The ways I use ChatGPT are ever expanding. Well, that's all for today. Remember, you can get all the lesson resources at plainenglish.com/590. Coming up on Thursday, happy birthday to me. We have a birthday themed lesson. If you're in Asia, if you have friends in South Korea, you might know what this is about. I'll keep you in suspense until then. See you on Thursday.